Chapter 10. Dillon woke as the first rays of sunshine poked in his windows. He wasn't generally an early riser, but he had always loved Christmas, at least when he was growing up. The last few years, he could barely even remember celebrating it. Flicking back the covers, he stood and padded over to the dresser where he had hidden Kaitlyn's gift. The charm bracelet he would give her today. The special charm he was planning to save to give her at dinner tomorrow. He opened the drawer and pulled out the wrapped box, but his eyes widened when the unwrapped box wasn't just beneath it. Dillon moved the other clothes around, but it was nowhere to be found. He was sure he had left it right under the other box, but if that were the case, where was it now? Maybe he had taken it out to show Margie, but he didn't remember doing that. Could he have left it in his coat pocket? He ran a hand across his face. Well, worst case, he could pick up another in town tomorrow. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been in his room and taken it. But why? The question would have to wait until later. He could hear the stirrings of the fellow guests and knew present opening would commence soon, and he still needed to take a shower. Dillon set the box on the top of the dresser and headed into the bathroom. 15 minutes later, he was clean, dressed, and anxious to give his gift to Kaitlyn. He hoped she loved it. He headed downstairs and to the kitchen first. As excited as he was, he still needed coffee. "Good morning," his mother said as he entered. She was wiping off the counter and in her full Mrs. Claus outfit today, a red suit with a white fur tip. "There's an excited little boy waiting on you." Dillon chuckled. "I figured, but I had to shower first and get some coffee." He pulled a mug from the cupboard. "Hey, did I show you what I got Kaitlyn for Christmas?" "No, what is it?" "It was a special charm, but now it's gone. I thought maybe I had misplaced it after showing it to you, though I didn't remember doing that. But I'm starting to wonder if someone took it." His mother's brow furrowed. "Who would do such a thing?" "I don't know." Dillon took a sip of the coffee. "But I plan to find out." He grabbed one of the cinnamon rolls his mother had made, wrapped it in a Christmas napkin, and headed to the living room. "He's here now, Mom. Now can I open my presents?" Kaitlyn rolled her eyes at Dillon behind Jack's back. "Yes, now you can open your presents." "Yay!" Jack made a beeline for the tree and began examining each box. "Can he read yet?" Dillon asked as he set down his coffee on the end table and sat down on the couch. "Because if not, this could get messy." She chuckled and grinned at him. "He can read his name." "Look, Mom, who's this one from?" He brought over a large box wrapped in green and red plaid. Kaitlyn leaned forward to read the tag. "That is from Margie." "Oh, she didn't have to do that." "Yes, she did," Margie said from the doorway to the kitchen. "I miss being able to buy things for young ones. Heaven knows my only son is taking his time providing me grandchildren to spoil." "Mom," Dillon admonished, but he enjoyed the blush that spread across Kaitlyn's cheeks. Funny, they hadn't had that talk yet, unless you counted the one they'd had in high school. Kaitlyn swung his hand back and forth as they walked. Autumn leaves crunched under their feet, but it was just warm enough they only needed a light jacket. "So, how many children do you want when we get married?" "Married?" Dillon tried not to choke on the word. He had just turned 18, and while he believed he loved Kaitlyn, he hadn't thought about marriage. "Don't look so shocked, Dillon Fields. I plan to marry you one day. Not anytime soon, but one day. and I want to make sure we're on the same page." That should make him feel better. She wasn't planning on rushing into anything, but somehow it didn't. He would be graduating soon, and his thoughts were consumed with photography and traveling, not children. "Oh, I don't know. One of each?" "Only 2?" Tiny lines appeared in her forehead as her face scrunched. "I want more than 2. It was so lonely growing up an only child. Weren't you lonely?" Dillon shrugged. Though he also was an only child, there had always been people at the lodge his family owned, and most of the time there were other children. He hadn't often felt alone. "Oh, I guess with all the guests you probably weren't." "Well, I was. It was just my mom, dad, and me. Then when Mom died, it was just Dad and me. I don't want my kids to feel like that. I think we should have 4 at least." 4? His throat was drying up again. "Well, yes. 2 is too few and 3 is odd. What if we have 2 boys and only 1 girl, or vice versa? The odd one out would get lonely, but with 4, there's 2 of each." "You do know it doesn't always work like that, right? There was a family who stayed with us once who had 10 children, 9 boys and only 1 girl. Kaitlyn shuddered. "Ugh, I always wanted a brother, but 9 of them? That seems a little much. Anyway, I know God will provide exactly the number we need when the time comes." Dillon nodded, but he was glad when the conversation ended and moved to less heavy topics. Yep, they should have that conversation soon. He wanted to know if she still wanted 4, and let her know that he was willing to have at least 3. Hopefully they could meet in the middle. Jack pulled off the paper to reveal a remote train set. "Wow, this is so awesome! Thank you, Miss Margie." The boy set the box down long enough to run and hug Dillon's mother. Then he was right back at the tree pawing through packages. "Who's this from, Mom?" Kaitlyn smiled. "That one is from me. See, this word is Mommy." Something tugged on Dillon's heart as he watched the scene. He couldn't believe he hadn't entertained the thought of having children before, and at this moment, he would agree to whatever number Kaitlyn wanted. "It's the game I wanted. Thank you, Mom." "You're welcome. Now, you have more gifts from me back at our house. I hadn't expected to stay here this long." "That's okay. I'm glad we did."
"Is it my turn now?"
Dillon glanced down at the bulge in his pocket where the wrapped box was hidden. "You have gifts too?" Jack asked. "How do you spell your name and I'll look?"
"Oh, I probably do, buddy, but I meant that I had a gift for your mother."
Kaitlyn's lips parted. "For me? You didn't even know you would see me."
"No, but once I knew you were here, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get you something. It's nothing big, but I hope you like it."
He pulled the box out and handed it to her. "I didn't get you anything," she began, but he held up his hand.
"I didn't ask you to. Just open it."
Jack leaned against his mother's side, clearly curious as to her gift. Kaitlyn unwrapped the box and lifted the lid. Her eyes lit up as she pulled out the delicate bracelet. "It's beautiful, Dillon." No longer interested, Jack sat on the floor and opened his toys.
"It doesn't even compare to you, but it's a start."
Dillon reached for the bracelet and helped her fasten it. Kaitlyn dropped her eyes. "I wish I had gotten you something." Dillon lifted her chin with his finger.
"Hey, you going to dinner with me tomorrow is gift enough."
The lodge door opened and Dillon and Kaitlyn both turned to see who it might be. Dillon's heart stopped in his chest when he realized it was Shauna. "Dillon! Oh, good. I did find the right place." She set down her suitcases and shut the front door. I wasn't sure that driver knew where he was going when he didn't stop in town. Shauna glanced around the room. Well, this is quaint. The tone of her voice didn't match her words, however. Dillon saw Kaitlyn stiffen and wished he could explain. He flashed her a look he hoped said, "It's not what you think," and rose from the couch.
"What are you doing here, Shauna?"
"I'm here to visit you, silly. It is Christmas after all."
"Yeah, but you said you hated the cold, and we broke up, remember?"
"Oh, I know you weren't serious about that. And after I saw this beautiful cover," she pulled out a copy of the travel magazine, "I just had to come see this amazing place. How come you didn't tell me it was so beautiful?"
"You didn't ask."
Frustration flooded Dillon. How dare she waltz in here and act like nothing had happened?
"How did you even get that? I didn't think it was released yet."
"Oh, it isn't for the general public, but Greta is a friend of mine. When she realized you were my Dillon, she called me." Behind him, Kaitlyn sucked in her breath and Dillon gritted his teeth. He would have to do major damage control later.
"But I'm not your Dillon. Not any longer. I broke up with you."
Her mouth turned out in a pout. "But, Dillon, I heard through the grapevine you were ring shopping. You can't go from wanting to propose to breaking up." "Come on, Jack. Let's go play in our room and give Dillon some privacy," Kaitlyn said behind him. Her voice was cold and composed, and the knife twisted tighter in Dillon's heart.
"I didn't buy a ring, Shauna. I realized as I looked at them that I had no idea what you would want."
"Oh, you know what I like." She batted her eyes and stepped toward him.
"No, Shauna, I don't. I don't know if you like round or princess cut. I don't know if you prefer gold or silver. The only thing I realized I know about you is that you don't like cold places. And I realized I didn't love you, which is why I broke up with you."
"I like princess cut, a carat or more, and platinum. See, now you know."
Dillon shook his head. "Where is this coming from anyway, Shauna? You said you didn't want to meet my mother, that you weren't ready to commit."
"I just realized how much I missed you while you were gone," which Dillon knew translated into the fact that she had been bored without him there.
"I'm sorry you came all this way, Shauna, but we're not getting back together. See, after you decided not to come with me, I started thinking back to the last time I was really happy, and I realized it was in high school when I was dating Kaitlyn. I had no idea I would find her here, but here she was. It was like God was proving we belonged together, and she's the one I want to be with."
Shauna's face hardened. "So what am I supposed to do now?"
"Go home. Find someone who loves you as much as you love yourself. I wish you the best, Shauna, but it's not with me."
"But it's Christmas Day, Dillon. I can't get anywhere until at least tomorrow. Perhaps I can just stay the night and we can talk about this later." Dillon fought to keep control. She wasn't listening to him, and as much as he hated sending someone away on Christmas Day, he couldn't have her stay here.
"Look, I'll call the other lodges in the area to see if anyone has a room. If not, maybe we can figure something out. But regardless, there's no reason to talk any further because we are through."
Kaitlyn tried not to stare as Dillon and the woman conversed, but when she stated Dillon had been ring shopping, the room began to spin. She knew she was close to having a panic attack, though she hadn't had one in years. How could he have been shopping for rings for someone else and not have told her? "Come on, Jack. Let's go play in our room and give Dillon some privacy." She didn't want to go. She wanted to hear the rest of the conversation, but she didn't think she could handle it. Kaitlyn grabbed one of Jack's presents while he grabbed the other, and they headed for the stairs.
They make a cute couple, don't you think?
Julian's voice came from the right, where he leaned against the wall at the top of the stairs. Kaitlyn shot him a look, but she didn't want to engage him. She just wanted to get to her room and cry. Of course, she wouldn't be able to do that while Jack was awake, but maybe she could escape into a good book while he played, and he wouldn't notice if a few tears spilled out. "Excuse us." Kaitlyn pulled Jack past Julian and into their room, shutting the door behind her. "What's wrong, Mom?" "Nothing, honey. Mommy just needs some time to think. Can you play quietly for a little bit?" "Sure." He plopped down on the floor with his new game. Kaitlyn rifled through her suitcase until she found the book she had been reading. She usually read on her phone so she could hold it in one hand and follow Jack around, but she always carried a paperback book when she traveled just in case. And this time, she needed the size of the book to hide her face. She'd become adept years ago at crying silently. It had been the only way to release her feelings when she had been married to Jerry. The first time he had hit her, she'd made the mistake of crying out loud, which only made him madder. She'd walked with a limp for a week after that, due to the bruising he gave her thighs. Kaitlyn quickly learned to cry silently following that first beating. When Jerry got angry, he would yell, hurl insults at her, and occasionally his fists would make contact. But if Kaitlyn remained still, the onslaught was usually over within a few minutes. Then she could retire to their room, roll over in bed, and let the tears flow down her cheeks. He was none the wiser, and her body didn't suffer as much. With the book in front of her face, she let the tears fall. She had known things with Dillon would end badly. In fact, she had set rules to keep this very thing from happening. Unfortunately, she had let her emotions cloud her judgment and broken the rules. How could he have not told her he was nearly engaged? True, they hadn't had much time alone to talk, but looking at rings was pretty big. And this woman was clearly a model or something. She was gorgeous. Kaitlyn could never compete with that. She was more like the girl next door than the girl on the cover of a magazine. And it sounded as if this breakup was recent. She had no desire to be his rebound relationship. That never went well and rarely lasted. Kaitlyn bit her lip as the words blurred. She wished Melody were here to talk to, though Melody would probably start with, "I told you so." Still, she would understand, and maybe she would even have an encouraging word to say. Perhaps she and Jack should just leave tomorrow. She could tell Margie she'd work on the rooms another time. She hadn't even begun designing them. Maybe that's what she should do. Whip out the designs the rest of today and tomorrow. Leave them with Margie, and do the rooms after Dillon was gone. The solid plan made her feel minutely better, and a few blinks cleared the remaining tears enough that she could actually read the page. Another deep breath calmed her heart, and she soon found herself immersed in the story. So much so that she didn't recognize the first knock at the door. "Mom, someone's knocking." Jack had been taught from a young age not to open the door to strangers, so he generally just told her when someone was there. Kaitlyn looked up from the book as the knock sounded again. "Oh, right. Coming." She placed her bookmark back and closed the book before crossing the room. As the door swung open, Kaitlyn realized she should have checked the peephole first. Dillon stood on the other side, and she wasn't sure she was ready to talk to him.
"Hi, I know you're probably angry, but I'd like to explain. Can we take a walk?"
Her shoulders rose with her breath as she debated. She probably should at least let him explain before she completely threw him off the bus, though she doubted it would help much. A glance back at Jack showed him engrossed in his game. Jack, will you be okay if I take a walk with Dillon for a bit? Sure, Mom. He didn't even look up from his tablet as he spoke. Okay, a walk, but this had better be good. Kaitlyn grabbed her coat and hat before following Dillon to his room so he could do the same. With coats donned, they headed down the stairs and out the front door. Though she wasn't sure she cared, Kaitlyn looked around for the stunning blonde as they passed through the living room. "Where's your fiancé?" she asked as they stepped into the cold afternoon. Dillon sighed and shoved his hands in his pockets. "First, she is not my fiancé." Kaitlyn shot him a look with raised eyebrows. Did he really expect her to believe that? "Okay, yes, I did look at rings, but it was because I felt like I should, not because I loved her. I realized when I had no idea what ring she would like that I shouldn't marry her. Then when I invited her to come here and she decided she didn't want to meet my mother or go anywhere cold, I knew I had to break it off. Honestly, I had been thinking I needed to end it for a couple of months, but that was the final straw." "I'm not sure how to feel about that, Dillon. I don't want to be a rebound." Dillon grabbed her arm and turned her to face him. "You are not my rebound. I told you that I couldn't stop thinking about you. After I broke it off with Shauna, I thought back over my last few relationships and realized I broke up with all of them because they weren't you. So if anything, those women were the rebound from you." He had all the right words, but he always had. Even in high school, Dillon had been a smooth talker. But so had Jerry, until his smooth words had turned into vicious insults. "I want to believe you. I do. But in the last 10 years, I've learned words are cheap. Actions are what matter." Dillon nodded. "I can understand that, and that's why I need you to know I sent her away. I drove her into town and dropped her off at another hotel. She'll be leaving tomorrow. Kaitlyn, I know it may take a while for me to prove this to you, but there's no one else for me. Watching you with Jack these last few days have driven that home even more for me. I want you in my life. I want Jack in my life, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to you." Kaitlyn's emotional wall dropped a little. The earnestness was evident on Dillon's face. "Okay, I believe you, but Dillon, my heart can't take this again, and I won't crush Jack." "You won't have to, I promise." With those words, he pulled her to him, and though she still had reservations, she allowed him to kiss her and quiet them for the moment. She could only hope her faith wasn't misplaced.